it's a constant reminder all throughout the ancient story about the good life. A God who creates out of nothing, and all of a sudden it's a call to this beautiful garden, a garden lush with food and animals and the presence of God. And even after the ancient story takes a turn, there's a promise that God has not forgotten, and that then in this relationship with this God, that there can be a good life. Even in the midst of the struggles of life, there can be a good life, a flourishing life, all through the ancient text, a constant call to that life. Even in exile, a call to return. Even in the struggles and the tragedies of life, a call to be made whole again. And then when things seem like they're about to break, then Jesus enters the picture. God made flesh, love made flesh to show us the way. And Jesus heals, and Jesus restores, and Jesus renews, and Jesus forgives, and Jesus empowers. Good life, abundant life, Jesus tells us. A living water for our souls. That's the promise. But even though we hear about it often, it is so easy to forget, because life comes visiting. Stuff happens to us, and stuff happens to our loved ones, and stuff happens in the world, and we hear about the tragedies that happen in the wars and the strife and the hatreds and the struggles, and we can get so simply overwhelmed that we forget how pivotal human flourishing is to the ancient story. We forget that by the power of the Spirit, we are able to come alongside one another and experience this kind of flourishing life for us and for the world, and that the worst moment is not the last moment. So we're reminded, what are we choosing? What are we remembering? Well, we're to choose life, good life, abundant life. But what does that look like? It seems like in a moment, it seems like that's impossible. It's almost like you want to tell me, you want to say, oh, but Pastor JC, if you only knew what I'm going through in this very moment, and I'm hearing you, I do hear you, and I come alongside you, and I cry with you, and I struggle with you, and I get angry with you, and yet the reminder is the same. We're going to choose life, good life, abundant life, flourishing life. But what does that look like right here, right now, in these days of ours? Well, it turns out that we're not the only ones thinking about this. Though the studies on human flourishing are becoming quite popular, and we're learning a lot from those studies across the world. There's a huge human flourishing study happening worldwide right now, led by some of the major universities in the United States. What does this flourishing look like? And they're seeing some interconnections here for us. But one of the interesting aspects of these studies is that they see faith communities as a key on-ramp to a flourishing life. That something happens in congregations like ours. And it's not just a Christian community, it's really any faith community. It's a key on-ramp because we are providing something in this way of living together. Because a key aspect of a life that flourishes is the social connection. And we gather week to week, and we gather for studies, and we gather for prayer, and we gather for worship, and we gather for fun and fellowship and celebration. So automatically, faith communities provide an on-ramp like this one, that social connection, that place where we belong, where we see one another. We also gather together and help strengthen our character and our moral foundation, another key element of a flourishing life. So we remind ourselves over and over again of the virtues of the Christian life, of things like wisdom and temperance, of things like justice and courage, also of things like love and steadfast love, sacrificial love. as we dig deeply in this way of life, we sense ourselves rooting. We feel steadier no matter what life is sending our way. Another way to think about it, another way of choosing life. Well, another way to choose life in these studies is health. What does it mean to be a healthy person, both physically and emotionally? And faith communities help us there too. They remind us that we should be a healthy person. For so many years, the Christian church has provided places for folks, playing teams together in church leagues. And so we think about the body in healthy ways, but also we connect with one another during those difficult moments. We provide things like groups for people who are grieving or people who are going through a difficult illness. We provide communities around the moments of life transition in divorces or at times of graduations or empty nesting. We create these places, containers that hold these moments so that then we can be a healthier person, physically and emotionally. We also do something else. We engage one another in what happiness is. Happiness beyond just kind of the fake smiley stuff that we're so used to. No, happiness as a sense of being rooted and being satisfied. We remind each other of simplicity as a virtue. Then sometimes the more choices we have, the harder it is to settle in. Well, the church comes and invites us to the simpler way, to remember what matters most: relationships, connections. What matters most is to be rooted. What matters most is to be interconnected in ways beyond the obvious. So we sense ourselves flourishing as we think about this too. Another way of choosing life. And then when life comes visiting and we flounder, when tragedies strike or when something happens in our life unexpected, these kinds of communities root us deeply. We have meaning and purpose. We know that we're human beings, that the image of God lives in us, and then that meaning and purpose then it gives us something to fall back on when things are going astray. But we gather together in the midst of those moments, and we remember. We remember. We know who we are. And we know the promises of flourishing. But this is not just for us. See, faith communities come and remind us of something else, though we can make that kind of hyper-individualistic. Oh, as long as I'm happy, or as long as my character's good, or as long as I'm rooted, or as long as I have meaning and purpose. No, we remind one another of something else, and that is that first thing is those social connections, that we belong to one another. That if our neighbors struggle, we struggle. And so our sense of identity is challenged at times. We are re-rooted in that identity together, not losing our own distinctiveness, not putting aside the diversity and the beauty that is the communities that we belong to. No, but it's that sense that in the midst of our uniqueness and in the midst of our gift sets and abilities, and in the midst of our circumstances, that we're better connected to our neighbor, to our loved one, to our friend. We re-rooted and grounded in that interconnected, interdependent reality, a call of God, of love made flesh, a call made possible by the Spirit of God that unites us. And so we rehearse it over and over and over again in the community. Isn't that why we gather for worship? We gather for worship as a reminder of that interconnection, our voices joined together in praise, our cookies and coffee connecting us in conversation, our sitting by one another in the pew. Another reminder that we're not alone, even in those moments where there must be some desperation. We, week to week, month to month, year to year, rehearsing this reality together, and we feel it. We feel it. That flourishing emerging, even on the tough days. We feel it, that heart being healed at key moments. We feel it as we come alongside our neighbor who might be having a worse day than us, and we can look at them in the eye and provide words of being with. They seen by us. Life being visited. Friends, there's a lot happening in our world, a lot of death dealing happening. But we are a people of hope. We are a people committed to human flourishing. So I hope we bring our hands together on this day. And we use this time of worship together, even this moment right here through this medium. We use this moment right here. You seen by the Spirit of God. You, a community praying for you. You might not feel it at the moment or be present physically, but a community that strengthens that journey for you who's watching in this very moment. We wanting flourishing for one another. We choosing life over and over again for you, for us, and for the world. And so don't forget. Don't forget. We make these choices together. And when things get really difficult and when anxiety is heightened and when we feel a bit desperate, look at yourself in the mirror and choose this kind of flourishing life. Make yourself a promise. And then look out your window. Look at neighbor. Call someone you love or shake the hands of a coworker. There it is. Connection. There it is, community. There it is, belonging. There it is, us together, God's own people. From the beginning of time, a promise for us and for the world of a good life, abundant life, flourishing life for all of creation. Amen.